Good morning. Another beautiful day in the forest of Dean. How lucky am I to have all of this on my doorstep? Today I wanted to do a quick video about surviving and how you might survive in the wild. I've been inspired, I guess, by a book I read recently, which was captivating. I was captivated from the first word. Miracle in the Andes by Nando Parrado. And this is the famous story of the Uruguayan rugby team who were on their way to Chile for an exhibition game, and their aircraft unfortunately crashed in the high altitude of the Andes along the Chilean-Argentina border. This was in 1972. Now, a lot of them died in the crash initially on impact. More died of exposure afterwards, but 16 remarkable individuals survived that unimaginable ordeal. It was made famous, of course, by the book and then movie Alive. The book came out in 1973, the movie in the early 80s. And more recently, you may have seen Society of the Snow on Netflix. And if you've not seen those movies or read the books, I would highly, highly recommend them. They're captivating reading, especially if you're into outdoor living and stories of human endurance. So what Nando and his fellow survivors went through really was a tale of unimaginable hardship, surviving against the odds with unfathomable grief and pain. You can imagine the exposure, the desolation, the isolation that they must have felt. 72 days on the mountain, seeing your good friends and family members in some cases disappearing, wilting, dying in front of your eyes. You cannot imagine it, and hopefully none of us are ever in a situation anywhere near as graphic as that. But what Nando and his fellow survivors gained from all of this unimaginable pain is an appreciation for life. And Nando must be one of the most remarkable humans on the planet. He speaks so eloquently about it, about how they just eke every last ounce of living out of life now, because they've seen the other side. Death is all around us, so we've got to grasp life and live it to the full while we're here, especially when we're fit and healthy. Let's enjoy life the best that we can, eke every ounce of living out of it that we can. But I've always had an interest in stories like this, stories of endurance and survival, especially against the odds. So today I thought I would do a quick video on a survival mindset and how you might survive if you were ever stranded in the wild. As I've said, hopefully none of us are ever anywhere remotely in a situation like that. But if you were stranded, you got 4 key survival components that you need to be taken care of, and namely they are food, fire, shelter and water. So let's start talking through those a little bit more in depth. So let's talk food. How would you survive in the wild? You've got to be putting calories into your body. You're going to be burning extreme amount of calories, especially in situations of high stress. So yeah, you need to sustain yourself. The average adult can last potentially about 3 weeks without eating substantial food, because your body will feed off its reserves. So if you're not putting the calories in, your body will feed on your fat storage, your muscle storage, your glycogen stores. And obviously we are all different body compositions. There's going to be different environments, different energy outputs. So there will be variables, but potentially you've got about 3 weeks without getting some substantial food into you. Now, even if you were a good hunter, the majority of your hunts will end unsuccessfully. So you need to learn to forage. So I would say peak times for foraging are probably mid to late spring and early summer, when you get lots of edible greens. And then the other time is early to mid autumn, when you're getting the nuts and berries. Outside of those times, it's going to be tough. It will be hard regardless. I will do a more in-depth video later on down the line about foraging. Just wanted to touch on it for now and the extreme importance of it. And just as I'm talking to you now, I'm surrounded by an edible plant all around the forest floor, which is wood sorrel. This tasty little guy here. Not a lot of calories on it, but something edible. Something just to keep the hunger at bay slightly, until you get something more substantial into your system. Water as well, of course, another essential survival need, more pressing than food even. We need to be getting some fresh water into our systems. Without that, we're going to go downhill rapidly. And it can be more challenging than you think to find fresh water sources in the wild that are safe to get inside you. So I will do a more updated video on that as well a little further down the line. But it is clearly one of your most pressing survival requirements. And shelter, of course, shelter is supremely important. Many of the survival manuals will say if you're ever stranded, the first thing you should focus on is getting yourself protected, getting a decent shelter. Now, it can depend on the situation, but generally I would agree with that sentiment. You need to get yourself protected. Having a good shelter not only gives you protection from potentially inclement weather or even extreme sun in some situations, it gives you a base camp, it gives you a sense of security, it gives you somewhere to conserve energy and to start to focus on your other survival needs. So building a shelter or having a decent shelter is paramount. I will do a full session video for you guys on shelter building techniques a little bit down the line. There's a lot of substance in that one, so I can do a full session on that alone. But shelter definitely one of your most pressing survival requirements. And the other survival requirement, of course, is fire. Now, fire is more pressing than we realize. Maybe in the short term without a fire you'll be okay, but if you're stranded for any prolonged period of time, you're going to need a fire. I mentioned Naked and Afraid earlier on. I really like that program because it's quite authentic. It really literally strips you bare, but people have to survive in the wild with nothing. And I notice a common thread on that program. It's the couples who struggle with fire will always leave early. It's going to be brutally hard anyway, but having a fire can just pull you through when you feel like it's unendurable. Fire not only obviously warms us and gives us security and protects us, it also allows us to cook food, sterilize water, and I think there's something deeper there as well. It might sound a little bit loopy, but it's a sense of companionship with fire. We've got a primal connection with fire that goes right back to Stone Age man. Having a fire just, it offers us this connection, just maybe makes you feel not so isolated. Things don't feel so bad when you're set around the fire, even if you are in an extreme situation. So fire can do wonders for the soul, lifts your spirits, lifts your mood, hopefully allows you to get something warm inside you through cooking or boiling water, making a natural tea, and obviously the warmth that we receive from the fire as well. So fire is imperative. Now that's the component of survival that I'm going to focus on today, fire building techniques. And obviously we need to be safe with fire. You can't just go randomly lighting fires in the woodland. So wherever you go to do your fire lighting, make sure you have the landowner's permission, make sure you're being responsible and doing it in a measured way, that you're not going to cause damage to any of the wider woodland. So with all that said, with any of the survival components, but especially with fire, you need to be pre-planning, you need to be planning ahead. If you wait till late in the day when you're already extremely tired, cold, hungry, fatigued, and then you start to focus on fire, you're already up against it. You need to be focusing on fire earlier in the day when you've got some energy about you. So you need to pre-collect, especially when the weather's good. Take advantage of that. Pre-collect kindling and tinder when it's dried. If the weather was to suddenly change and then you start looking, you're already in a bad situation. It's going to get worse. So I would say take advantage of the good weather, get out when you've got some energy in you, pre-collect lots of kindling and some dried tinder. So I'm in a pine forest at the moment, that you probably noticed. Pine is a good place to be in terms of getting your kindling, because pine has got resin in. It burns faster and better. It dries out fast as well. This is what I'd be looking for. Little branches already snapped off, hung up off the ground, bone dry this is. dead wood here, and if the dead wood won't have sap flowing through it, and again the kindling will be bone dry, snap off really easy. Your ideal kindling should be between, I would say, matchstick and finger thickness. This is the fine kindling that you need to collect, and you could spend quite a bit of time. Don't scrimp on it, you're going to need lots of kindling. So get lots of kindling, and then get some fatter fuel as well. So you're building your layers of fuel. You're going to go from your fine kindling to your slightly larger dried sticks, and then eventually you'll have fat fuel as well. But you could spend 3-4 hours easily building up your fuel storage, and it's important as well that you've got somewhere dry to keep it. Right, now I need to find some tinder. So obviously it goes without saying in a survival context that you always take the easiest option. So as an example, rather than building a shelter, if you find an outhouse or a shed, that's what you would use as your natural shelter. It makes sense. And it's the same with fire. If you have something on you that makes life easier, that's what you would use. So for example, cotton wool, if you have a first aid kit, or bandages that you can get some cotton out of, that's perfect for catching a spark. You obviously fluff it open. So this is if you don't have any of those things available. You then need to be getting natural tinder, something that's going to catch a spark for you. And there are a few options. So as you can see, I've come out into the open now. There's a nice little orchard by the woodlands that I've just come out into. And what I'm looking for is dried grass. We'll see little bits of dried grass here. Maybe not the best example. I'll come over here with you instead. So you're looking for the dried grass, because that can make a nice little tinder nest for you. So there's some down here. All the brown stuff, of course, you need to be careful taking it out, because sometimes there'll be some brambles interspersed with this as well. But basically what I'm looking for is enough of this dried grass that I can make myself a nice little nest with. And just to demonstrate, I've got a grass stalk in front of the lens now. You know, I've collected enough here. When I get to my fire lighting area, this is going to make me a nice little fire nest. It doesn't have to be perfect, but once I can make myself a little nest like this, I can then put something else in the middle that will catch the spark for me. So that's my next quest. I need to find something dry that's going to catch a spark. And you've got a few options for that. Things like honeysuckle bark can work well for your nest as well, actually. Also seed heads are the prime thing, and at this time of year thistledown is out, so the thistles have flowered and they've got nice fluffy seed heads, which is perfect for catching a spark. So that's what I'm looking for now. And here we go, I found some lots of thistles over here. You can see the nice fluffy seed heads. Perfect tinder, perfect for catching a spark. Now obviously it's really important that you collect this when it's all dry and fluffed out. If it's wet and damp, it's no good to you. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier on. You need to be pre-planned. You need to take advantage of good weather. A lot of indigenous tribes around the world have done and still do use seed heads for their fire lighting, and they will have tinder pouches that they have on them, waterproof tinder pouches, and they'll always have a dried source of tinder in there, generally seed heads. So that's not a bad shout actually to have if you're an outdoor enthusiast. Get yourself a little tinder pouch and just have it always topped up with some dried tinder, because you never know when you find yourself in a pinch and you need to have that dried source of fuel with you. I always make a habit late summer, I collect a few bags loads of seed heads like this, because it'll sustain me for lots of the bushcraft sessions that I run then over the weeks afterwards. One of my favourite tinders. You can also use silver birch bark as well, of course, which again I will use if I find a tree naturally shedding the bark, the nice papery bark. I don't like to take the bark unless it's naturally peeling off, but silver birch bark is a good natural source of tinder as well, and even bulrush fluff as well. So it depends where you are, it depends what the situation is. You use the easiest and most convenient thing for you in that given situation. Okay, so I've got myself some dried kindling, I've got myself some dried tinder. Now I've one more thing that I need to find, so I'm just popping back into the woodlands to see if I can find some dried bark, because I need a dried base layer to put my fire on. So a nice piece of dried bark can work well for that. Again, this is something that you should be getting early in the day or when the weather is good, because if it's wet bark, it's no good to you. So everything gets harder when the rains come. And I like the rain, generally speaking, but in a survival situation it will make life more difficult, so you've got to be taking advantage of the good weather when you can. Here we go here actually. I've just found deadwood tree stump and some of the bark, as you can see on the side, naturally coming off. Opportunistic. So that's what you need to do in survival. Be opportunistic, take advantage of resources as and when you find them. So this will be a nice dried layer, dried base layer for my fire. So let's go light some fire. Okay, I've come to our fire lighting area. So as I mentioned earlier, you can't just light fires randomly in the woods. Not safe, not a good idea, not cool. But here, we're on our own land here, and obviously this is our designated fire lighting area. Lots of clearing around us, so no danger of a fire spreading. So I've brought all the resources that I need. Dried bark, which is going to be my base layer. I've got some dried grass for my tinder nest, which has got a bit loose on me now. You don't want to pack it too tight, so obviously a fire needs heat, fuel and oxygen. If your fire nest, your tinder nest is a bit too tight, you're not letting the air get through it. It won't burn adequately for you. So put it together, but try and keep it a little loose as well, if that makes sense. So it's contained together, but not so tight that it won't burn. Pop that in the center. If you've got any wood shavings, they're always a good idea. If you've got a knife and you can whittle, put a few fine wood shavings in there. Silver birch bark if you have some as well, because I've got a bag full of seed here, thistledown seed that I was collecting earlier, and like I mentioned, whilst this is good to catch a spark, it will also fizz out quickly, so we need to put something else in there as well. So if you put that in amongst the middle of your grass nest, but also have something else in there like wood shavings or silver birch bark. I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer so you can get a better view. So this is our tinder nest, starting to take shape now. I've got lots of the fine kindling here beside me. Obviously, as mentioned earlier, you would need a lot more fuel than this, but I'm not going to do a big fire. This is just to demonstrate, just to keep going for a little while. So yeah, let's get our fire lighting going. So tinder nest ready, fuel ready. I'm going to use a fire steel today, which some may say is cheating slightly. Like I mentioned, always use the easiest source. I will do another session one day on friction fire lighting. But if you've got a fire steel, that will give you your source, your spark, your heat that we need to get it into the nest. So let me bring you in closer for the moment of ignition. Here we go. Let's get our fire going with our fire steel. Onto our seed heads. As you can see, they can fizz out fast, so what I need to do, put some extra seed heads. Is, you need to get a lot of these resources. I need to intersperse the seed heads a little bit more and hope that they catch amongst that dried grass as well. These steels are not my favorite fire steels, but they will work hopefully. Here we go. Have I got enough flame going? Cool. Now you need to get fuel on there fast. So layer your fuel over the top. Your fire will need a lot of fuel in the early stages. This needs to be bone dry, so you got to get your fuel on without smothering the fire. That one was a little bit thick that I just put on. Put it up a little bit so the air pockets are getting underneath them as well. You got to get it burning fast and adequately. Lots of fuel on. This is a precarious time in the early stages. Too much fuel and you'll smother your fire. Too little and it will fizz out, so you got to get the balance right. Lots of the fine pine, like I mentioned earlier, gives you the best chance of this. It needs a bit more air. And fueling a fire is a whole skill, it's a whole art in itself, and it can be heartbreaking. There's days you'll get it easier, there's other days when it will be more challenging. You just got to keep persevering. If you have any wood shavings, pop them on there. Just in the early stage, a bit of extra grass just to give it a bit more strength. Keep it going. You can see it's still, you still can't quite relax just yet. It's starting to fizz out on me. Okay, let's go again. So you can imagine doing this in a critical survival situation when you're fatigued, cold, tired, hungry, at your wit's end, and you mightn't have an ignition source. You've got a friction firelight, which is brutally hard. This is really, really challenging. Fires, tough work, but super rewarding if you can get a good fire going. We're starting to get a bit more substance to this one now. So I'm getting those layered pockets of fuel on, so there's lots of oxygen. Here we go, finally. Starting to flame up nicely for me now. Oh, and I can feel the benefit of this fire now already. Nice bit of heat off this one. I don't want to build it too big, but you would keep layering it up with the finer fuel and build up layers of that, and then gradually start to introduce fatter fuel, slightly thicker sticks that will burn nicely for you as well. And I guess you can only really start to relax when you got the fat fuel burning. Then you can start stepping back and relaxing a little bit more, and then you can focus on your cooking, your sterilizing water, keeping warm, drying out your equipment, whatever else you need to do around the fire. But definitely having a fire going increases your chance of survival, lifts your mood, and makes your situation better than it was previously without a fire. So I'm going to let the fire gradually die down. I didn't want to light a big one today, just a small one, just to demonstrate that fire lighting technique. It can be hard, as you can see. You can struggle with it even with all the best laid plans in place, but the more dried fuel you have, the more dried tinder you have, the better chance you're gonna have. Even on a dry, clear day like today, it can be hard work. So obviously I will clear all this away responsibly. I've got a little fire bucket to put the ash into. I'll douse it all down properly beforehand and then tip the ash into a fire bucket and take it away responsibly. But yeah, fire super important. So hope you enjoyed the little tutorial today. Obviously there's much more layers to fire lighting as well. Fire by friction is a whole other animal, so we will focus on that on another day, and we can talk about campfire cooking, food that you can cook around the fire as well, food that you can find in the wild and cook around the campfire. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the journey today, and I'll see you on the next one.